mini tamburan maliya.
Gombe ta kace inuwa.
Ya ka gama lafiya.
Gombe ta kace inuwa.
Bare su dau ariya.
Gombe ta kace inuwa.
Inuwa madugu uban tafiya.
Gombe ta kace inuwa.
Sadakar kuwan zaman lafiya.
Gombe ta kace inuwa.
Jangwarzo na mijin duniya.
Gombe ta kace inuwa.
Gwamnawa da kai muke fariya.
Gombe ta kace inuwa.
Gwamnatin ka inuwa sai godiya.
Gombe ta kace inuwa.
Today I'm going to the 2026 proposed budget that has been submitted to the State Assembly breakdown. I would like to start by breaking down the budget, and also before I go into the 2026 budget, I'll briefly mention the performance of the 2025 budget. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the great opportunity to give the breakdown of 2026 proposed budget, which was presented by His Excellency Muhammad Damajan Gombe, the Governor of Gombe State, to the Honorable House of Assembly on the 13th of November 2025. The journey made so far is full of collective sacrifice from the length and breadth of the state. Sacrifice and patience are no doubt yielding positive development across the state. Therefore, the present administration, under the able leadership of His Excellency Governor Muhammad Yahya, will continue to fulfill his promises to the good people of Gombe State as encapsulated in our 10-year development plan, which we call DEVACOM. The preparation of 2026 proposed budget was innovative, challenging, but finally rewarding. Appraisal of the 2025 budget performance. As at September 30th, the total approved budget for the state was 369,902,500,000. This was later revised to 451,661,858,000. In order to appropriate the additional revenues received from the Federation account and the excess revenues from the IGR received, the supplementary budget was graciously approved by the Honorable House of Assembly. The performance of the 2025 budget as of 30th September 2025 is as follows. Revenue expenditure. We have the recurrent revenue, we have the recurrent expenditure, capital received, and capital expenditure. Number one, the revenue, recurrent revenue. The revised approved 2025 budget was 265,910,245,000, and the actual to September 2025 stood at 336,484,678,083 kobo. The performance that gave us a performance of 126%, 126.54%. At the recurrent expenditure, revised approved budget of 2025 was 116,4,705,000. The actual to September was 75,846,504,509.88 naira. And this figure gave us a performance of 65.38%. Capital receipt. The revised approved 2025 capital receipt was 116,720,000,000. Actual performance to September 2025 was 52,769,000,000. 880,909 naira 0.82 kobo. This figure, there was a percent performance of 45.1% of the budget was 2025. And capital expenditure. The revised approved budget was 253,896,785,000. Actual to September 2025 was 143,182,957,505.57. The performance was 56.39%. It is to be noted that the performance above is at 30th September 2025. The overall performance of the budget as at 30th September 2025 was 60.64%. The overall performance as at September for 2025. Now we'll go into the 2026 budget. The 2026 budget the budget of consolidation has a proposed total sum of 535,691,983,000. We have had the figure before when His Excellency the Governor presented the budget to the House. The proposed budget, as I said, for 2026 is 535,696,903,000. And the budget is prepared in line with the National Charter of Accounts, the NCOA, guidelines issued by the Governor's Forum in order to ensure a unified system across the Federation. Gentlemen of the press, I wish to gladly inform you that the 11 local governments courses in the state have also keyed into the National Charter of Accounts. Gombe State has fully complied with the program-based budget. This year's budget is based on, or the 2026 budget is based on the PPB, which is the program-based budget. And the 2026 budget priority areas are as follows: education, youth empowerment and poverty alleviation, agriculture, health, environmental and potable drinking water, works and infrastructure, creating an enabling environment for foreign and domestic investors. That is the reason why His Excellency keeps on pumping money into the Dadeko Industrial Park. Ladies and gentlemen, by focusing on these 7 key areas in the 2026 budget, this administration will leave no stone unturned to better the lives of people of Gombe State. The increase in the size of the 2026 budget as against the 2025 revised budget was because of the desire of this administration under His Excellency Executive to impact positively on the lives of the people of Gombe State with the resources available at his disposal. If you observe, the revised budget was 451 billion and the proposed budget is 535 billion. So there is a huge increase there. Now we'll go to the comparative analysis of 2025 budget and the 2026 budget. Recurrent expenditure. Recurrent expenditure comprises of the following. Number 1 is the personnel costs. The revised budget for 2025 for personnel costs was 35,157,173,000. The proposed one for 2026 is 41,222,383,000. This showed an increase of 17.25%, and it carries total passenger budget 7.69%. Personnel costs took 7.6% of the total 2006 budget. Then overhead costs for 2025 as of September was 52 billion 156 million 450,000. We are proposing 2026 91 billion 979 million 430,000. This showed an increase of 76.35%, and the total to the budget 17.17%. 17.17% of the 2026 budget. The social benefits 2025 16 billion 944 million 16 billion 944 million. We propose for 2026 10 billion and 49 million. This showed a decrease of 40.69%. It took 1.87 of the total budget of 2026. Debt servicing for 2025 it was 22 billion 305 million. For 2026 we propose 21 billion. This is a reduction from the 2025 figure of 5.85%, and it took 3.9% of the total budget, 3.92%. Total for 2025 of the recurrent expenditure was 126 billion 562 million 623,000. For 2026 we propose a figure of 164 billion 250 million 813,000, which is an increase of 29.77%, and the percentage to the total budget stood as 30.66%. That is the recurrent expenditure. Now the comparison between 2025 and 2026 for capital expenditure. The capital expenditure is divided into 4 sectors. We have the economic sector, the social sector, general admin, and law and justice. For 2025 budget, the economic sector took 283 billion 538 million 600,000. For 2026, we propose a total expenditure of 269 billion 542 million 100,000. There is a slight decrease from 283 billion roughly to 269. There is a reduction of 4.94%, but it took the whole chunk of the budget. Even though there is a reduction, the total to the budget size of the economic sector allocation stood as 72.56%, 72.56% of the total budget. The social sector for 2025, we have 32 billion 835 million 635,000. For 2026 allocation, we propose 80 billion 98 million and 70,000. There is a huge increase from 32 to 80 billion. The total percentage of increase 143.94%. The social sector budget increased by 143.94%, and it took 21.56% of the total budget. Then the general admin budgeted for 2025 6 billion 683 million, and for 2026 allocation, we propose 19 billion 628 million. This is also, there is a huge increase in this sector, which is 103.72. So the general admin budget increased by 103.72, and it took about 5.28% of the total budget. Law and justice was allocated 2 billion and 42 million, and for 2026 was what we proposed 2 billion 173 million naira. This showed the allocation increased by 6.41%, and it took 0.58% of the total budget, 0.58% of the proposed 2026 budget. Comparative analysis of the 2025-2026 recurrent revenue. The recurrent revenue comparison between 2025 and 2026. Now the IGR, which is the internal generated revenue. For 2025, the amount was 32 billion 756 million 155,000. We propose an allocation of 39 billion 52 million 996,204 naira. This showed an increase of 19.22%. So we are expecting the IGR to improve to 39 billion by 19.22%. And in terms of its contribution to the total revenue budget, stood at 12%, 12.345%, 12.35%. The statutory allocation. Statutory allocation as at 2025 was 73 billion. We are proposing for 2026 80 billion. This showed an increase of 9.58%, an increase from 2025-2026, and it is 25.30% of the total budget, 25.030. The share of VAT was 80 billion, and we brought it down to 65 billion, which is a reduction of 18.75%, but still it took 20.56% of the total revenue we are expecting in 2026. The other fact revenues. For 2025, the allocation was 105 billion 310 million, and then for 2026 we proposed 132 billion and 15 million. This showed an increase of 25.39%. But in terms of its contribution to the total revenue is 41.77%. 41.77%. Ladies and gentlemen, the total for 2025 of recurrent revenue was 29 billion 66 billion 155,000. For 2026, it's 316 billion 102 million 996,204. This shows there's an increase of 8.6% over and above the 2025 allocation. The comparative analysis of the capital receipts between 2025 and 2026. Capital receipts are domestic grants, foreign grants, local borrowing and external borrowing. For domestic grants for 2025 was 18 billion, and then for 2026 we're proposing 18 billion 920 million, an increase of 5.11% over and above the 2025. But the total percentage of the capital receipt of domestic grants to the total budget is 8.38%. 8.38%. Foreign grants for 2025 was 3 billion 400 million. For 2026 was 4 billion 950 million, showed an increase of 45.58% over and above the 2025, and it took 2.19% of the total capital receipts. Local borrowing, 7 billion in 2025. That has not changed. We left it as it is. Also 7 billion for 2026. That shows there is no increase or decrease. However, in terms of its contribution to the capital receipts, it contributed 3.10%. That is local borrowing. The external borrowing for 2025 was 102 billion 400 million. For 2026, we propose 186 billion 700 million. A huge increase. It increased by 82.32% and also contributed 82.76% of the total capital receipts. The total capital receipts for 2025 was 139 billion 300 million. Expected for 2026 is 225 billion 570 million. This showed an increase of 61.93%. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important to note that the huge sum of the external borrowing is majorly a drawdown from multilateral organizations, which the federal government borrow on behalf of the states, such as the World Bank and Islamic Development Bank. What we are saying here is that this borrowing, particularly external borrowing, is coming from the multilaterals, and it's the federal government that signs on behalf of the states, and it's coming mainly from the World Bank and the Islamic Bank. If you add it, mainly, I said mainly, there are other small ones, but mainly this foreign borrowing is coming from the World Bank and Islamic Bank. Gentlemen of the press, it is important to reiterate that this government, under the leadership of His Excellency the Executive Governor of GOMBE State, GOMBE, does not intend to leave any uncompleted projects as it appears to wind up its second term in office. I repeat, this government does not intend to leave any uncompleted project. That is the reason why all sources of receipts income is brought into the budget to ensure that by the end of 2026, no outstanding projects will be taken to 2027. And His Excellency says that he is not going to leave office with any outstanding project that he has started. The GOMBE State Internal Revenue Service DRA has done a wonderful job by meeting its 2025 target in October. The GOMBE State Internal Revenue Service achieved a 103% percent target of its total budgeted amount to be received in 2025. Therefore, I've done a wonderful job, as we said. However, the reward for hard work is more hard work. The service will be encouraged to do more so as to reduce over-reliance on the Federation account allocation. His Excellency is doing everything possible to ensure that we are self-reliant in terms of revenue. We are far from it. However, we are improving. 2023, 2024, and 2025 are good years of improvement in terms of the generation of internal revenue. This is because His Excellency has focused his attention and also improved the modernization of the revenue board and also activities that are taking place all over the country and particularly in the state. We're sure the IGR will continue to improve from this 2025 to 2026 and beyond. His intention is to lay a foundation, and I think His Excellency has done that, or he's doing that, a foundation whereby the state will be able to stand on its own in terms of internal revenue. In 2020 financial year, government will ensure optimal utilization of resources within the approved budget. I will therefore ensure adequate tracking of all incomes and expenditures in compliance with the relevant budgetary provision to serve as a feedback mechanism in order to achieve the desired objectives of providing the dividend of democracy to the good people of Gombe State. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening, and God bless you.